Well, hello there, everybody, and welcome to episode number 100. That's one with 2 zeros behind it of FinalBossTV, your WoW and Game rating show. We did it, Reddit! 100 episodes! And I was thinking about doing something like different or special for this one, but I don't want to like interrupt the Ketchup Junket, which today is episode number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8 of 8. So we're going to be talking about elemental healers today, Resto Druid, Resto Shaman, and Mistweaver.Monk, for the final Ketchup Junket for all Warlords of Draenor, which is sort of a bittersweet feeling, I guess. This will be the last major coverage that we do here for Warlords of Draenor ever, for the most part. Beta stuff should be starting soon for Legion, and I have 2 special episodes coming up soon with Limit, and then the pre-BlizzCon episode, and then the post-BlizzCon episode, so Warlords of Draenor is basically done with. So hopefully you guys have all the information. If you missed past episodes, of course, they're all on YouTube, iTunes, or Stitcher. But who are today's guests for Elemental Healers? Well, I'm glad you asked. Because joining us again, back from the other side of the pond, here's Alzu. Hello, sir.
Hello there.
You ready to talk about trees?
Yeah, trees and trees only.
Trees and trees only. Apparently, tree sap, best sap. That's what chat was talking about earlier today. Is that true?
Yeah, well, I guess that's the only kind of sap there is.
Well, rogues would beg to differ, but I get what you mean.
No. That's not the thing anymore.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Appreciate you having back on the show again, sir. And we have Zuggie over here actually trying to kill Mythic Archimon at the exact same time, because he is a boss. Hello, sir.
Hello.
Are you ready to talk about monks?
I am completely ready to talk about monks.
Only
Best
your
class in the game.
Oh. You're talking about Brewmaster monks today, though, right?
No. Mistweaver, of course.
Okay, good. Making sure we're on that.
Best spec in the game as well.
Right, but only Red Crane, right? That's the...
Yes.
Okay.
The Serpent Stance should be removed from the boss.
Wow! That's... Oof, bold words.
Mm-hmm.
Goodness me. As well, for the Resto Shamans, there's Dunderz. Hello, sir.
Hello.
Are you ready to throw water at people and keep our socks wet?
Yeah, totally.
That's, I mean, laser beams and sock wettening is Resto Druid stuff. And Resto Shaman stuff, rather. Even though there is that one totem that kind of carries raids right now. That I don't know, like grounding totem? Oh, no, SLT, I'm sorry. Goodness. But yep, it's glad to have you guys all on the show today, and we'll be sort of wrapping up everything for the last 3 healer classes for Warlords of Draenor. It's weird. We've come a long way, I think, in this expansion. Many things have changed and happened, and we're gonna wrap those up today. So I guess when last we spoke then about everything here. Actually, before I do that, get ahead of myself here. Oof, I'm all excited. Episode 100. Alzu, you want to plug who the heck you are and why the internet should listen to what you have to say for posterity reasons and stuff like that? Who are you, sir?
Well, I'm a long time druid, and I'm currently healing in Paragon, and been here for now. Wait, 1, 2, yeah, soon 2 years, I think. But I've seen this expansion with them, and finally come back to my druid after testing out a bit of other healers during what's that instance called? Blackrock. The Blackrock instance and Hellfire Citadel.
What did you check out? Which was like
I played Paladin, I played Priest, I played some Shaman. So pretty much everything but Monk. And in Highmall I was the Druid, of course, but
right. Now you're back to the Druid though. So
now I'm back to the Druid.
Are you glad you're back? That's the main question.
I'm really glad I'm back. Like this is so much more fun than the others. Like this is what I've known for the last 10 years, so known and loved.
That's awesome. All right, Zuggie, over to you, sir. Watch the internet know about you. What do you do stuffs for monks and things?
Well, I don't I've played Monk since well, since Pandaria came out basically. Before that, I played a bit of a Holy Paladin. That was mainly during Firelands and Dragon Soul, and then I swapped for Monk. Before that, I played Mage, and I played Mage in a Sanctum and a bit in Method as well at one point. And yeah, I've been fist weaving it up ever since.
Of course, yeah. No mistweaving though, right? Just fist weaving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, back when Jab Jab Uplift,
Oh,
that was the thing.
yep. Rest in
That was
peace, Jab Jab
Yeah,
Uplift.
rest in peace. I'm sad. I want Jab Jab Uplift back.
I'm sure you and many of the monk community would love to have that back. That was the
Yeah.
times.
Those were the times, for sure.
Dunderz, up to you next, sir. Resto Shaman things. What you got?
All right. I don't know. Let's see, for how long have I been playing Resto Shaman? I think I started playing Resto Shaman back in Wrath.
Ooh.
And before that I played Warrior, so that was really the first time I started, like, I think it's the only healer class I've actually have any experience with. But ever since then I've been playing fairly hardcore as a Resto Shaman. Played in Echoes, later on moved on to a guild called /Cry, and then about 3 years ago I ended up in Panansa. And I've been with them since.
Awesome. Have you always been a troll, though?
No. I tend to swap quite a lot, actually. Yeah. I think I've been Orc, I've been Panda throughout most of it. Yeah, most tiers actually I've been Panda. And just quite recently, I think for this last tier I went Troll.
Well, you're no longer on the master race. I'm sorry. I don't know. Trolls are a little weird. Gotta stay Panda, man. Well, fair enough. You guys have all been healing for a very long time. Different mindset to play a healer. Like, I play Resto Shaman a little bit, and I originally played this game as a Resto Druid. I went old school balance Thunder Turkey in Nax Ramus 40 when you could melee for mana. That was weird, but it was a long time ago, I'm afraid. So now, when last we spoke, Alzu, has the spec changed much for Resto Druids? Has anything really switched around with Tier 18? How is the Tier 18 bonuses going? Enchanting and gemming goals, that kind of stuff. How'd the Tier 18 bonuses work out for Resto Druids?
Well, nothing really has changed in terms of how the mechanics work. Like, of course, the Tier 18 bonus brought the huge usability to Life Bloom with being able to have 2 of them and increasing its power by a lot. And well, but the same concept is there, that you just spam Rejuve all day, every day. And the only major difference I feel like this tier brought is Trinkets that are super powerful, which give you so much more freedom in casting, because you don't need to worry about that mana like nearly as much as you needed before. Like, now you can cast all the wild growths you always wanted to, and it makes you just so much happier healer now. Nothing really about others. Like, haste was in high mole, I think mastery was a bit better than haste, even though haste was so strong throughput wise. But now haste has just reinforced its place as the master, and like, it hasn't changed since BRF that much though.
So why is haste your better stat then for Resto Druids? Like, what's the
it's just mathematically better. Like, if you because HOTS gain haste benefit from increased healing, which is rare for healers. Like, direct heals like Healing Touch don't get that bonus healing in itself. But then also the GCD, global cooldown, is reduced, so that you get double dipping benefits kind of from it, and it's just stacks to really high amounts, and it's almost comparable to intellect, or even better at some cases.
That is a little bit strange. Is there are Resto Druids in your? I know when I talk about Resto Druids way back in the day, there was an issue with it. Like, we were having problems with their healing throughput wasn't good enough, and that so much was tied to tranquility. You were kind of classified as one of these 3-minute wonder classes. Is that still a thing, or has gear and these set bonuses really rounded Resto Druid out to be like this really good blanket healer again? How has that worked out for you guys?
Well, about tranquility, it is still the thing. Like, you can see Trank being like almost 20% of your all healing, and it just depends if you get a good one or not. And like HPS looks wildly different depending on just that one single spell. I still feel like druids are really good otherwise as well, because the Trank is so spread out. Like, of course, shamans have healing tide, so it's not unique in this way.
Right.
But Trank is really powerful as it's spread out, so you can easily negate a mechanic by this by this spell. You don't need to worry about anyone's health during that time. But yeah, I still feel like druids are in a good position even outside tranquility, even though it's still their main thing.
Right. I guess I speak from a point of that we haven't had a Resto Druid in my guild in a very long time, so I'm actually not entirely sure how it would feel to have tranquility back. So I'm not aware on how that would work. So that's why I was curious if that's still a huge balancing point for you guys. So nothing else about that? What do you say? So enchanting, gemming is all haste, and
yeah, it's really simple. Like, yeah, there is some, because the gear in Hellfire Citadel is it's staged so that the first bosses give lesser item level loot. So it brings up some interesting choices, like, do I want the haste mastery best stat braces from the first boss, or the kind of worst stat braces from the end bosses, which are just so much higher item level, but that's the highest level of thinking you need to go with the gearing. Otherwise, it's just like, okay, this has haste and this must be better.
Well, I guess that's simple enough, I suppose. Well, alrighty then. How about Mistweaver monks then, Zuggie? How have things changed in Tier 18? Has the set bonuses worked out well back and forth? Because you kind of have two different sets of set bonuses with Red Crane and Serpent. So how has the focus for gearing and stuff have changed for, if anything, has changed for Mistweaver monks?
Well, it's basically still the same as of T18 regarding stats and stuff. You are able to reach when crane stancing. You are able to reach above 100% multi-strike with Tiger Strikes up. So I am actually considering, because I at the moment I'm using two different gear sets. I have one for pure crane stancing, and then I have one for more mist weaving style of play. Because I normally don't use my fort set bonus when I'm fully crane stancing. Basically to get rid of all the horrible mastery that should be banned from all Mistweaver gear.
Is the master the whole like spawning orbs? Is that what?
Yeah,
works
spawn.
still?
Yeah, the orb spawning. Yeah, and you basically you don't benefit anything from mastery at all when you crane stance. I mean, it would have been a nice feature if you got some kind of damage from it. Spawn a different type of orb that explodes and deals damage, or just spell power maybe. I'm not really sure what they could do, but right now I'm just running the 2-part bonus for the increased damage on the Rising Sun Kick, and then I'm running as slow spirit as humanly possible for when I'm crane stancing.
Right. Well, that is definitely still true to a point that there's really no reason for monks to care much about spirit, because how prevalent Red Crane is getting manatee stacks, which I guess is that maybe why they didn't give mastery any bonus to Red Crane, because when you're in it, you just basically have infinite mana, and if they gave it something else, it'd be too powerful?
I don't know, actually. I mean, you still spawn the orbs, and so theoretically you still benefit from it in that sense, but it's just the orbs is I'm looking forward to Legion to see if they're gonna change something with our mastery, because at the moment it's a boring mechanic in my opinion.
Okay.
But other than that, I mean, the regarding the 4-set bonus from mist weaving is extremely powerful. I mean, I believe I was one of the first healers in my guild to get the 4-set bonus, and it just it exploded my healing. I mean, it's ridiculous how much healing extend life does. It should definitely. I mean, if you're gearing up healers, you should probably consider giving your Mistweavers that one first.
Now, that's more prevalent for the Mistweaving style of healing, though? There's really not...
Yeah.
So you only run the 2-piece for Red Crane. But
Yeah.
if you're Serpent Stancing all the time, you want the 4-piece then?
Yes, for sure.
Okay.
For sure. It's the healing. I mean, it does... Sometimes it tops the healing of your uplift. That's how powerful it is. I mean, depending on how you use it and depending on fights, it's extremely strong, both for AoE healing, but the single target component of it. Obviously, try to keep it extend life on your tanks
Right.
as a main, and on fights like Belithria, for instance, you want it on people that get the debuff.
Okay. Alrighty. So then you said stat-wise, though, multi-strike, all the things for gemming and enchanting?
Multi-strike all the way, and as I said, if you're capping, I'm considering gymming a bit differently now because I'm reaching, I believe, 109% multi-strike when everything procs. So I'm probably gonna go with different gyms or weapon enchant. Probably gonna get a bit more haste so I can jab faster.
Oh, there you go. There we go. Alrighty then. Sounds fair enough to me. Alright, Dunderz, how about some Resto Shaman stuff? How exactly do you dampen our socks, exactly? How has the tier 18 sets worked out for you? How is the gemming? Has that changed? I know there's like 3 different ways to build a Resto Shaman right now. So what's the...
Wow.
How's this work?
I didn't even know that,
Oh,
honestly.
really?
That's really interesting. So I guess it might have to do with like the constant debate on whether you should go crit or multi-strike as like for later secondary stats. But as far as I'm aware, and I think most people agree on this at least, is that mastery is still king. And there is no like that's not a different thing from the earlier tier. Like it's just mastery all the way basically. As we got higher item level, like it's haste in my opinion has gotten above like both multi-strike and critical strike rating. Because you can just afford like the increased cast like will cost you to burn more mana obviously, but it's just like the region can take it at these gear levels.
Right.
As far as like play style go compared to earlier tier, I mean we've gone from like spamming chain heal to spamming chain heal even harder, right? So it's like, and I mean the earlier tiers that we had back in Blackrock Foundry heavily promoted the usage of chain heal. Whereas the current tier bonuses we have also promote heavy usage of chain heal, so there aren't really any differences. Like nothing has changed in terms of like talents. You still go for it's like pretty much cookie cutter. Everyone goes for the same thing. There's a bit of a debate going on between like Echo of Elements and Ancestral Swiftness. Some shamans I know like to go Echo of the Elements for every single boss, and that's perfectly fine. I personally prefer Ancestral Swiftness, but yeah, it's basically just like mastery all the way and chain heal all the way.
Right. So I guess when you say master all the way and chain heal, so I mean I guess the rotation will be just put out Riptides and chain heal and keep down Healing Rain. So I had
in some cases, yeah.
I had a question here about Earth Shield. Is it still just... Was there much interaction with that changed over the course of Legion? It's kind of a really iconic thing. Shaman,
yeah. I agree. I think it's a shame that it's in its current state because it feels like a very iconic ability. It isn't. It's something you sort of care about. Like you make sure that you have it up during the course of the fight, but it's not your highest priority. Like what you're really looking to get out of Earth Shield right now is the added bonus to healing on that person. It's like it's not the healing that it gives itself because it ticks for like absolutely nothing.
Right. And I guess my trap question was with the recent buff to Echo the Elements and double Spirit Link Totem. Has that become too powerful or mandatory for progression-oriented guilds? Like, because it's very, very good.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I don't know. I don't think it's too powerful. It varies from fight to fight because I mean I might have been doing it wrong, but I actually went. I mean, I went Echo of the Elements for 3 out of 13 bosses in Hellfire Citadel, and all the others I went Ancestral Swiftness. But on the fights where I ended up using Echo of the Elements, it wasn't like it might be a bit of a stretch to call it like something that gave us the kill or like changed everything, but it's like it added a lot of convenience. So it might be too strong for just like a talent change or just like swapping onto a different talent, but I wouldn't call it overpowered.
Okay.
Because like on most fights, I still ended up going Ancestral Swiftness for just the added haste and the convenience of an instant cast.
Yeah, that's what was weird to me is about like the 3-minute meta here, which just because it was brought up before when I started making this episode over 2 weeks ago now, and a lot of you had to poke me like, who are elemental healers? I was like, they're all 3-minute wonders, but then the Resto Shaman gets 2 of their 3-minute cooldown.
Yeah.
On top of the fact that the area you also have Healing Tide Totem as well, so they kind of just like gave you even more. Which to play the Shaman card on this one, all we have is cooldowns. I mean, I have Wolves, 2 totems technically. I've got Liquid Magma if I want to use it. I've got Ascendance too. So do you. I mean, this is kind of how Shaman's always been, very cooldown oriented. But you got another one.
Yeah, definitely.
So So I guess that'll bring me to the healing situation in Draenor, the good, the bad, and the ugly, I guess. And we'll go back around from Alzu again. So from your perspective, since you were done with this much earlier than many people in the world, how did healer balance feel then, and how has it changed sort of now, what you can relate to guilds that are currently progressing? And how's all that worked out?
When we were progressing, I was actually really adamant on the best possible healing setup. It don't always revolve having 4 healers, by the way. And it was having Disc Priest, Holy Paladin, Resto Shaman, and a Mistweaver Monk. That was like my dream. And since then, I've actually realized that Resto Druids are really powerful as well and can be used really effectively in progression raids, in farm raids. And that only leaves Holy Priests, actually, outside of the equation. And they are... I don't actually want to comment too much on them because I haven't personally seen one in such a long time. But 5 out of 6 healers having good balance during progression and during farm is pretty good in my eyes.
Right. I get asked this question sometimes about like healer tank balance and how DPS balance works. I think the DPS balance in this expansion has been like the most tumultuous situation, but I do believe tanks and healers have gotten to a good point where you can kind of use 2 of any tank, and you can kind of use 4-ish of any healer, and you're fine. Would you say that the healing balance has been really good the whole expansion? I don't think it has huge up and down swings outside of like Discipline Priest later, but that's always happened, so...
Well, the balance wasn't always this good. Like, I feel like right now, the healer balance is the best it's ever been. Like, there is always someone who's a bit stronger, but as it is, it's really good. Earlier on, though, like in Highmall, Discipline Priests were so far ahead of everything else. And in Foundry, I felt like Resto Druids were lacking because the gear wasn't quite there yet to carry with all the wild growths you can do now, and the fights weren't quite suitable. It has to do a lot with the fights as well. If the encounter has specific damage types, then of course like some healers are worse than others. Like heavy tank damage favors paladins, and occasional heavy damage spikes favors discipline priests and shamans, whereas steady damage favors Resto Druids and monks. So I'm really happy how it is right now, but it's really prone to change at any point.
Yeah, I mean, when we started off these healer episodes back in the beginning of Warlords, Resto Shaman was easily the weakest in Highmall, and then they had multiple series of buffs, and now they are almost not mandatory, but they're in that if you bring 3 healers to a raid, you're bringing a Resto Shaman, a Discipline Priest, and a Holy Paladin. And then you've got like 1 other slot for Mythic anyway, and maybe 2 other slots for like 30-man Heroic. So it's good to see them not as weak as they were, but it's also weird how strong they've been buffed. But so how is Monk stuff then from your point of view then, Zuggie? How is the healer? Because you're on right now, literally on Archimon, so you're sort of similar in my vein. You're a little bit ahead of me, obviously, because I'm only on Manaroth. So from our perspective, or yours in this case, how has healing felt progressing right now for you?
I mean, healers are overall pretty well balanced. It's better than it's ever been before, in my opinion. Obviously, holy priests, as Alzu said, I haven't seen one either. It's a really rare breed. But I mean, again, it comes down to damage patterns for monks at least. If it's the, as said, more bursty, spiky damage, then I just DPS because you're always gonna have a paladin or shaman or something just taking that healing from you. So I mean, overall, I think it's nice to have so, kind of like a tank healer, and that's paladins for sure. But I would like to see more balance around classes actually being good at everything. As in monks actually being able to tank heal, as well as a paladin, or a paladin being as good a raid healer as a Resto Druid or a monk. I mean, it would be nice, because right now I feel like if you have a 3 healer fight, you have 2 reserved spots always, and that's a discipline priest and a holy paladin. You always want those 2. It would feel nice to be more, have more options to go with whatever setup you want, rather than having those 2 always as a must. That's one of the big things I feel like they've failed with multiple expansions and multiple tiers, is the fact that discipline priest always gets it out of hand, and the paladins are just so strong when it comes to tank and single target healing.
Right. Alani even brings up in chat right now that it's not like paladins actually tank heal. We just beacon them.
Yeah.
But we went over that
Kinda,
on the episode where we were talking about Healers of Light, is because double beacon is just too good. It's just too effective.
it's really strong.
Yeah.
I mean, we kind of have the same with the set bonus, kinda, with extend life. You could call that kind of a beacon. I really hope it's gonna be baseline though, and moving forward to Legion, because it's really good.
Yeah. We'll have to see. I think that's something we've echoed on the show a couple times before. Dunderz, your perspective,
Yep.
sir. Because you're sort of in the middle ground of this, right? You weren't at the same level of Paragon, and you've been done for quite a while, though, regardless, in Penenza. So how have you thought of the good and the bad and the ugly for the healing meta, I guess you should say?
Well, I think I agree with Zuggie and Alzu in that's like the healer balance is as good as it's ever been. Like, I don't think it's ever been this good. In terms of high end rating as well. Like, you can pretty much bring anything and it's fine. Aside from that, like I feel like we're still, as the other said, like falling into the pattern of like you still have these 2 mandatory classes, which is like a discipline priest and a holy paladin that you just sort of have to bring. And for this tier, like maybe might just be me, but it feels like shamans almost to a certain extent like fell into that as well. That it's like the 3 healers you want to cover is like, or the third being the restoration shaman. So I mean that's great for me, I guess. But it's other than that, I don't know. It's healing balance across the board. It's been really good in terms of just throughput and what people can do during fights. I personally haven't felt that I've suffered on any fight as a restoration shaman due to like spread out fights. Like High Tide helps with that a lot. So yeah, it's still a boring thing for me during farm, where basically I just get like as we get more gear and as we get better at doing the fights, like I just progressively keep getting worse and worse in terms of throughput. So that's something I guess I'd like to see changing, just a complete change of our mastery. But I mean it's a great thing to have during progression. So
now this came up on the first healer episode, and I want to kind of throw it back to you guys as well before we get into the trinket discussion, is that we went into this expansion thinking that we're going to have 4 to 5 healers on encounters, at least for a mythic standpoint, right? Which I don't know if that always means that there's going to be just like retarded amounts of raid healing all the time. So I don't know how they would actually make it balanced to have the 4 to 5 always, because right now we're really in the 3 to 4. And is that too few slots for healers to be brought to mythic? Because that means you have like maybe 5 on your entire roster. Whereas, like, you always need many more DPS. So, I don't know. How do you feel about that? I'll go back around the other way. Dunderz, you first.
All right, so I mean, personally, it doesn't really bother me with the amount of healers you end up using for a fight. I understand like the frustration of people when it's like you're pretty much like most guilds have like 5 to 6 healers in their roster probably, and they know that someone's gonna have to be benched for every single boss. Um,
Yeah.
and I guess that's a frustrating thing, but I'm not sure like how to actually change that because it plays a lot into like raid covering cooldowns that just alleviates the heavy parts of the fight that just makes it possible to bring less healers. Like you basically cover the fact that you have less healers with cooldowns. So they'd have to do something regarding like raid covering cooldowns to up the amount of healers required for boss fights.
Yeah. What do you think, Zuggy? Anything?
Well, I kind of agree. For me, it feels like, and it's felt like that for a long time, that you obviously always try to bring as few healers as possible, and now with the monks being as good as a state as it is, you usually bring 2.5, like 2.5 healer, because the monk is the third healer and just DPS all the time.
Yeah.
The only reason you bring it is because you want that raid cooldown to cover some damage. But other than that, you don't really need a third healer. Like Comrock was a good example, like with 2 heals that basically with me DPSing on our first kills. So I mean, I don't know what they could do. I'd probably tweak something with raid cooldowns, or I don't know, more steady damage all the time. It's kind of difficult how they could actually change it. So because it's always gonna be you wanna fiddle around with bringing as few healers as possible, and
Yeah.
usually it is. I know Paragon had some kills where I thought, holy shit, were they able to like 3-man heal that? That's pretty impressive, you know. So I mean, but usually it is just because of the raid cooldowns that you bring additional healers. So I don't really know what they could do.
If they made raid cooldowns on healers longer, maybe? Like, so they weren't as up as often? I'm not sure. Because every fight doesn't need to be Saffron.
No, no,
Because
I
that
don't
would
know.
just be
I mean,
weird.
I do like the 3-minute cooldowns. Maybe bumping it up to 5 or 6 could potentially. But then again, then it just becomes World of Cooldown craft again.
Yeah.
That's not really a good way, in my opinion, to fix it.
What do you think, Alzu?
Well, the issue is, in my opinion, exactly saying what Dunderz and what all the others said. So I feel like the cooldowns are a major part of the issue, but I feel like you could solve it with changing the fight encounters themselves. If you bring up a lot different damage type, you can maybe open up different scenarios for healers to shine. Like, I'm in favor of strong cooldowns myself. It makes you feel like, okay, I press this button and huge things happen. It's a nice feeling, and I don't want to get rid of that. So instead, maybe increase the steady damage by quite a lot, so that you are forced to like, if you have 4 healers, they will just say that no, we cannot do this. We need the 5th one. And what the steady damage does at the same time is that you cannot cheese them with strong cooldowns because it is constant. So, and I feel at the same time it balances out the healing classes because then paladins and discipline priests don't get that, well, maybe unfair advantage they currently have. So I feel like that could be a potential solution, but of course I haven't tested it out, and so
Right.
but I would like to see it given a shot at least.
Yeah. It's a weird place, and I've talked about this a lot on the healer episodes and the interviews and things like that. And I don't know if anyone's really had the answer, and we'll just have to keep waiting to see how they iterate, because the balance we've had now, as you've said, feels good, but you still only need 3 to 4 healers, where they're under their goal they wanted to have at 4 to 5, because just raid balance purposes and giving other specs and classes a chance to do what they're supposed to do. So this brings me to trinkets. So we'll start with the Resto Druid Archimon trinket, and then if you want to go into that and then kind of pair it with the other trinkets that you find potentially very powerful, or ones that you set and forget with it, or if you even use the Archimon Trinket. So, Alzu, how does this work out for the Restoration Druids?
The Seed of Creation is actually kind of interesting because in itself it's really powerful. Like, okay, first of all, it has this huge criteria that if the raid is not stacked, it is worthless. Like, it's just one of those things. Like, it's impossible to use in some fights. But if the raid is stacked, however, the comparable, like if you scale the effect as intellect, it is tremendous, like over 1000 intellect of value. It's just huge.
Wow.
But the thing is that it needs to be the best instead of just good. Like the two common options are the demonic phylactery, the one that reduces mana cost, and the emulsion, the leech trinket. And those are just, I would say, too powerful. Because the phylactery, its a mana regen effect is hugely powerful.
Right.
Like that is, on the other hand, comparable to not thousands, but over 1,000 spirits on a regular fight.
Oof.
Just because druids cast so often, and then intellect haste, they are so nice stats for druids, like we discussed earlier. And then the leech trinket, I guess. We can go a bit more in detail to that trinket later on, but its effect also, it's just so good that it's hard to pass for the Seed of Creation itself, the Archimon trinket for druids. Like, it's just so versatile and provides that steady output that it's just unmatchable.
Right. Yeah, well, I'll go into the leech trinket after we go through all three of you. So for druids, then, you can get use out of the Archimon trinket, but then you just suggest you don't really need to. So the Fell Shadow Emulsion and the Demonic Phylactery, probably your best two go-to.
Yeah, I would go with those two always.
Alrighty. Mistweaver Monk time, and we'll save the weird shenanigans for you until we talk about the leech trinket as well. So how do trinkets work for Mistweaver Monks? How is the Archimon one, and then what other options do you actually see in the other four, Zuggie?
The Archimon one is horrible. Like,
oh, okay.
they outdid themselves by making something that bad.
Wow.
Like it's just, you don't want it because I mean it just, the Soothing Mist is like, in theory it would have been good. Like, it was good on, if I was a council, I believe you could do some shenanigans, because as Alzu said, you have to be stacked again all the time. Like, and on council you were stacked, so it was pretty good, usable, I guess. But again, the other trinkets are just so much better. I mean, the leech trinket, the crit use trinket, I mean, mirror for that matter. I mean, it's just, no, you should never go with the class trinket at all.
That is
Use the
unfortunate.
yeah, it is unfortunate, to be honest.
So then,
I mean,
you said then, so Demonic Phylactery, good. Still, I think every healer doesn't have a problem with that trinket, as far as I know. But you said Intuition's Gift, that's the on-click crit trinket. Is that powerful for Mistweaver?
yes. I mean, I really like, I mean, 95% of all fights are DPS as a Mistweaver anyway. And
right.
the crit use is just so nice for damage. But it is also pretty good for healing. I mean, pair it up with a revival is just probably a bit overkill, but it's just so powerful. And the Int as well. I mean, it's just, and the Spirit. It's just such a good trinket.
That's pretty definitive in that regard. No love for the flickering Fellspark?
No, it has mastery.
Oh, that's true. It is right. Yeah. Well, alrighty then. So Archimon Trinket, and then other trinket options for the Restoration Shaman then, Dunderz. What you got? How's this work out for you guys?
So the class trinket is interesting in the way that it's not very good.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's it's pretty much the same as it is like in Suggie's case, but it's like it doesn't give you any static stats whatsoever. So compared to the other trinkets that would generally be viable, it doesn't give any regen to you whatsoever. And it does, I mean, it does proc from our 4-set Riptides as well. So it can proc, and it can also proc, like, even if you're, say that you cast a Chain Heal, and your initial Chain Heal hit doesn't hit a person with Riptide, if one of the other bounces then goes on to someone with Riptide, that can cause the proc of the trinket. So it's sort of like it sounds like it's going to be viable in that way, that pretty much everything can proc it, but it just doesn't add up to be barely any throughput whatsoever on bosses where you even would think that it actually is good. So unfortunately, it's not a very viable pick in my opinion. And there is also the strange thing where it literally takes a copy of that Riptide. So what could end up happening is that you make a copy out of a Riptide that lasts for 0.5 seconds, and it just goes on to another person, and then it just drops off instantly. So, but it's just not a very big gain compared to other trinkets that gives you regen and stuff.
Right. So. I've played with it when I was doing like time walking and I was healing, and I thought it was cool because I would suddenly see like 2 full duration Riptides on the tank, and I'd be like, all right, cool. Or it would bounce to someone else that I'd Riptided forever ago, and it would copy that one, and it would just fall off immediately. So I know what you mean in that regard. It's kind of... How about the other trinket options then? So if you're not really going with the Arcane trinket, what do you...
I do like Flickering Fellspark.
Oh.
Yeah. It's like you could argue that it's a bit under budget since it's got a lower item level than the other ones. But it just gives, like, it gives 4 of our, absolute best stats. It gives a static amount of intellect, spirit, haste, and mastery. So it's great in that sense. So it's definitely not a bad choice. Obviously, like, it's a no-brainer that the best in slot, like for pretty much every other healer, is, and that goes for shamans too, is Demonic Phylactery from Socrathar. So that's the obvious, like, first pick. But after that, like, it's pretty much a toss-up between Flickering Fellspark and Intuition's Gift. You can also go with the Leech Trinket if you like. I never got it, but you can go with it if you have it.
Well, all right.
It's something that I should add about the Leech Trinket, is that it doesn't, because for whatever reason, the healing we do with our totems isn't counted as our own healing, and this plays in with like AG and Cloudburst totem. If for whatever reason you use Cloudburst, which you shouldn't, but if you do, yeah, it's if you do, then or Healing Tide. So Healing Stream, Healing Tide, and Cloudburst will not give you any leech out of the trinket. So if you like pair it with a Healing Tide, then none of the Healing Tide healing is actually going to count, like give you any leech when you're using the trinket. So that's probably like a reason as to why you'd give it to another healer instead of a shaman for your first drop. So but it's still a decent trinket.
Well, that then brings me to the Leech Trinket discussion then. We'll go back to Alzu with this one because you had some interesting points you wanted to bring up about said trinket.
Yeah.
So what did you have to go with that, sir?
It's I don't know. I just love the trinket. It's so complex, and the fact that you cannot evaluate it like straightforward. Like I just look at the logs and estimate how good it is. I guess as Mr. Robot has, I think, the functionality to track it, but Warcraft logs doesn't right now. So it's really difficult because, well, who is Ask Mr. Robot? And but anyways, it's I see a lot like why is my HPS so low, and then they use the Leech Trinkets, and that's usually the reasoning. They don't really look at the well, I don't know, forgetting my words here. But they don't really...
The relationship between the two, because you have to dig into logs to find how much healing you're actually giving your raid with the Leech Trinket, right? Because you don't see it. Correct? So
yeah, exactly. But it's just so hard to analyze. There are weakers that can do it. It's something that many people have, and most people have who use the trinkets, and they give fantastic numbers for it. As an example, I had an Iron Reaver pool where it was 30% of my all healing done.
Holy crap!
It was just massive. But then, how much do I attribute it to our DPS? Our DPS is pretty good, and it increased the effectiveness of Leech. And then on some fights like Belharia, I don't think that works properly. So how effective it is there when it shows only 5% of my healing done. And this is according to the weaker, like, it can be wrong, can it? I don't know. Like, all these things just make it so interesting that it's so tempting, it looks so great, but is it really?
Yeah, it's a weird conundrum. I know that when I first saw that trinket when it was on the PTR, I was like, wow, throughput healers that can blanket raids are going to love this, because obviously each iteration of the leech proc or stack on a particular DPS, they stack all together. So you can get like 20% leech on your DPS, and that can be huge in certain situations, and that kind of moves healing off of them. If they're healing themselves up for a little while, you can put it on something else. And of course, they're healing themselves as your dots, your hots really, are healing them as well too. So it's a crazy symbiotic back and forth, I think, with that trinket. But
I feel like that Trinket is at its best when there is the steady damage, well, which happens to be the favorite of Resto Druids as well.
sure.
So of course the Trinket is worth us for like Discipline Priests and actually Holy Paladins, and like with the totems not really taking the effect. Shamans are not too happy with that either, I guess.
Yeah.
So it doesn't leave too many classes that actually want to use it, but at least for Resto Druids, when Resto Druid is good for a fight, then the Leech Trinket is as well. So it makes it the perfect combination.
I'm sure in some way Jack wants me to bring up that it's pretty good for Holy Paladins as well. I mean, Holy Priests. Goodness me. It's not
Yeah.
really good for Holy
Oh
Paladins. It's
yeah,
pretty good for Holy
yeah. I
Priests.
remember him saying that. Yeah.
Because they're blanketing people with renews and chakra stuff and do whatever they do. So they're in a similar vein to Resto Druid, I'd imagine.
Yeah, but who plays those?
Oh wow! Ah! So
Exactly.
on the
It's
flip
the
side
ugly
of
truth.
right, on the flip side of that though, Zuggie, you get to use the agility trinkets as a red
Yeah.
crane fist weaving monk. So
That's fun stuff,
Eh.
especially on Iskar. Probably the best. I mean, it's obviously not good for single target, and it's obviously not that many fight where you can actually use it beneficially. But I mean, it's hilarious to use on stuff like Iskar, for instance. I mean, it's doing second most of all my damage. It's just so huge on that one, together with Cheetah Pedo as well, of course. I think one of my top locks I did, what was it, 63k DPS or so. As a Mistweaver, that's pretty decent numbers.
that's a pretty good number, I imagine. I don't know if other
Yeah.
healers doing the same thing. And you don't have the soul capacitor yet, so this might be kind of like an offset that maybe somebody in chat might know how this works. But we joked right before setting up the show that like there are many revivals with the soul capacitor on Red Crane Monk, because you start all the state with it and it pops in your eminence, and it does that because the Blade Master images don't eminence, but the soul capacitor obviously would. So is this an okay thing that Red Cranes get the option with these trinkets, because the other healers don't?
I don't know. I mean, obviously it's hilarious. So I don't mind as such, but it probably shouldn't be doable, I guess. To have a healer equipping a DPS trinket, and I mean, because of the way that monks work, I have more attack power than some melee classes.
Right.
And my trinket actually does more damage than theirs, because I have more attack power than them.
Ridiculous.
And that is kind of broken, in my opinion.
The mirror can multi-strike too, and if you're at cast multi-strike, every spin is 2 spins, and you 4 at a time. So that's
why I mean it's so good as a Mistweaver, because you do have those insane numbers of multi-strike. So I mean, and your crit as well, because obviously Blackout Kick 20% more crit. So yeah,
it's a
you
weird.
do get some kind of sick numbers with the trinket.
It's a weird synergy there, but even weirder than that is this crazy ring that we've been dealing with now for the past couple of months here, or weeks, depending on when you've got your ring. The healer ring is called Aetheralis, the Eternal Reward. And I'll kick it off with Alzu. You didn't have this on progression. You have it now. How impactful is this crazy ring for the healers, at least from your perspective?
Um, well, the thing is kind of that I'm even though I got it fairly early, it's still like hugely underleveled for me because well, I was switching classes and I only kind of recently came back to my druid. So I have this feeling that my ring isn't at its best by far. So it's hard to see the effect really. It doesn't do anything special. It just adds and multiply to all your heals. You don't see people's health bars going up by in a second when you use that ring. It's just something that you can see in logs mostly. Like it doesn't feel impactful, but when you start to think about it, like how much easier healing is while it's on, wow, this ring is actually pretty good. It's kind of the awkward case when it doesn't feel like it's doing anything, but it actually does a lot.
Yeah. It's an interesting case. How does it work for you guys, Zuggie? Because you're progressing with the ring, just like I am. So is it coordinated as sort of a raid cooldown? Is it used to as a, instead of using a healing tide totem or a trank or whatever, or revival, do you use the ring? How does that work for you guys?
We actually have it mapped into our cooldowns, as you said. Like for instance, on Archimand here, we use it on fourth wave or third wave of Infernos, for instance. So I mean, I don't feel it as much because I'm GPSing all the time. So I mean, for me, I would actually rather have the int proc or spell power proc. So, but I mean, it does have quite an impact on some fights, at least fights where I am actually healing. I can feel that. I mean, it is a great boost for my healing, at least. So it is definitely a second raid cooldown for everybody.
Yeah, I think that's kind of how it's worked out. And depending on your healing comp, however, too, it kind of gets weird with the who can get the best benefit of it or who gets a raid cooldown during it. Because I'm sure if you like revival during the ring or tranquility during the ring, it's a totally different story if you're just healing. But I don't think you can do that because there's sometimes at a point where you're just going to overheal anybody anyway. But the giant shield you get afterwards is good. How about you, Dunderz? How has things worked out with you with Aetheralis, sir?
Right. I feel we had killed almost every boss by the time people started getting the ring. And we didn't really like map it into anything sort of like a rotation or use it for anything specific on farm bosses either. The thing that I find a bit awkward, or like I agree with Alzu on a bit, is that it's like you don't really feel it that much. It doesn't feel like it has any impact because we never used the trinket on farm bosses as sort of a standalone kind of thing. You know, we always pair it with an already existing cooldown, like a tranquility, for example. And you know, we have managed to get through those phases with just a tranquility before. So, you know, all it really does for us is that it increases the healing on the meters done by whoever, you know, puts it together with a cooldown. So it hasn't really changed the way we don't like build it around a fight or anything. It's just like it's just a boost. Like people generally just pop it whenever they feel like, or just pair it with something. We never use it as a standalone. So.
Yeah, it's very weird because the tank ring has sort of interesting synergies with different class pairings of tanks as well as it gives them damage. Whereas obviously the DPS ring has things where it can actually change entire fight strategies and remove parts of fights by chunking an ad to half health or pushing a boss by 3 to 5 to 7% faster than normal with the big explosion by cheesing some AoE. The healer one is just kind of like, we heal for a little more.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I'd actually like to add that the special effect of it, the shield, it's actually really meaningless when you use the ring. It lasts for 15 seconds, and after that 15 seconds, the situation is over. There is no danger anymore. And then the shield pops on, and it's like, hey guys, I'm here. Oh, I missed the party. It's of course it heals sometimes, and it's sometimes really good even, but I'm really unimpressed by that myself.
Like there are some occasions where it's like you might get some benefit out of the actual absorptions after the hectic part is over,
Right.
but it's pretty rare. It's very rare, in fact. So
Yeah, it's an interesting situation. I think it's been a test. Every last tier of every expansion for the last, at least this one and the last two, they've always sort of given weird set bonuses or trinkets or ring effects now, and they've tested things. You know, that then sometimes get rolled into new effects in the next expansion. So it's basically a live beta test of this ring. So it does stuff. A lot of you puts in chat DPS ring, some Pac-Man faces, tank ring, and then a bajillion Pac-Man faces in the healer ring. So yeah, I understand that situation from my healer point of view, because I see it pop up on weak auras and I'm like, oh, there it is. Did it do anything? So I feel kind of bad, but it's a thing. At least you guys, you know, it's not the one that bounced around before and increased the one healer's healing for 15 seconds and then bounced someone else because, I mean, ooh. But all right, talent time, and then we'll take a little break, and then we'll come back and take questions from chat room. So Resto Druid talents. Alzu, you want to walk me through how talents have changed from either 15 to 100 or from 100 to 15, whatever you want to do? Walk me through how specs have looked and how talents have changed, if anything, for Resto Druids.
Yeah, sure. To be honest, they are really, really cookie cutter nowadays. There are some chance to vary with them, but I don't really feel it myself. Like it's the stage where I don't judge people who use examples of the forest, but I wouldn't do that myself ever. Like if we go one by one, like Displace a Beast is just so strong. Having that blink ability saves you from so many different situations. And then the tier 30 is, well, it's debatable again. Like you could use Isera's Gift or Renewal if you feel like you are getting in trouble really often. But that's kind of the thing. Like Renewal it's just a potion.
Yeah.
Sure, it's a big potion, but like you shouldn't need to be using a potion that often, and it's still like a lot less HPS wise than Isera's Gift. And then there's the Black Sheep Scenario Award that hasn't seen the sunlight in ages, if ever, even in
from a Resto Druid point of view. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever been used in PvE, but it's a really powerful hot. Don't get me wrong, but it's too powerful. Basically, it banks its strength in the hot, which makes it overheal and which makes it kind of bad. Like there's just no good use for it.
Okay.
Then there's the CC tiers, 45 and 75. Well, those are uninteresting, to be honest. Like, there are used for Typhoon, Mass Entanglement, Fairy Swarm. There are used for, well, really rarely Incapacitating Roar, Mighty Bash, mostly just Vortex, but
yep,
it's just dependent on the fights.
Mass Entanglement got its time in the sun on Iron Maidens, though. It definitely did.
Yes, like... and I actually remember in Terrace of the Endless Spring, I think.
Oh.
In Mists of Pandaria, I used Fairy Swarm really effectively on the first boss, where there was those ads running all the time, and they needed to be slowed. Like it has seen some use as well. But mostly it's Typhoon. The knockback is pretty nice.
So then you said you don't like Soul of Forest, so you obviously go with Force of Nature all the time, right?
No, actually, Force of Nature. The Force of Nature isn't. It's just not good. The Trents they don't do anything really. They just throw up their arms and continue with their lives until they die after 15 seconds.
Right.
While it's actually, they're kind of nice to use. I personally like how they feel, but at the same time, you don't see anyone's HP bar go up because you cast that spell. It's right. Insignificant.
So Incarnation then for you?
Yes, it is the one turn to go. It's too powerful to pass, really. The fact that nowadays you're spamming so much Rejuve, and it increases its healing by, 30% plus the 15% already?
Yeah.
It makes it a really strong cooldown. And Wild Growth at the same time, increasing the targets from 6 to 8 with the Glyph. So it's a 30% increase there as well. So your healing done is increased by so much with that. And you are saving mana, and it has a long duration. It's just a all around really solid cooldown.
Alrighty. So 90 then?
Yeah, 90 is an interesting place. There is actually some variation. I lied. Yeah, sorry. Because you can go Heart of the Wild or Nature's Vigil nowadays. DOC saw its sunlight during Foundry.
Yep.
But nowadays you just don't need the mana. You don't have the time to Wrath, and you don't need it that much as you used to. So it's just not good enough. The others, though, they are solid increases. They increase all pretty much all the healing you do. But with the increasing item levels, especially in 6.2.3, when you get the Valor upgrades, the fights are just going to be so short that Heart of the Wild has ridiculous uptime. And it'll be really strong. On the longer fights, though, like on Archimond or Manorath, Nature's Vigil is still really powerful when you want that small boost ever so often.
Okay. And now the big one.
The big one. Like, there is only one talent in that here. It's Germination. I don't even want to look at the others. Like, they just...
Wow.
Like, Moment of Clarity, I like the idea, but Regrowth does not support it, really. They buffed it to 7 seconds, but it's just not good of a spell, the Regrowth. It's mainly for, like, I need to get this guy topped up fast, but it's not really great in the long run.
This is the one thing I asked before. I don't know why Omen of Clarity just only works on regrowth.
Yeah,
It
well, it would be
only works on regrowth.
It would be too powerful if it worked on wild growth, and it would you would use it by accidentally if it worked on rejuve. So
Right.
There's kind of no other choice.
And then rampant growth just didn't see much use. PvP talent maybe.
I think it's used in PvP, but I don't take my word for that. I don't really like it. Consuming your rejuves, it's a big thing. It doesn't increase your HPS. It doesn't increase your flexibility really, because you need that rejuve to Swiftman anyways. It's no, I don't feel that talent.
Fair enough. Any other major glyphs you want to bring up real quick too before I move on to the next class? I put wild growth in here as a major glyph, as you brought that up with Incarnation.
Yes, it's something you need to have all the time.
Anything
else? But then there's the utility glyph, the Stampeding Roar. Like, if you want to ever use that spell, you pretty much have to have it, because the entire raid needs to get it. And the 10 yards range it has by default, it's just not enough.
Okay.
And well, then the last one is kind of you don't really care about the last glyph, so you could pretty much put anything there.
Yeah, there's a couple of good ones here, I assume.
Yeah, there's the regrowth glyph that makes the spell like really consistent,
right.
And then there's the rebirth glyph, which is kind of unnecessary since the baseline is 60% health nowadays anyways. And actually the glyph of blooming is interesting with the 2 sets. I looked it out very recently and found out that the HPS from Life Bloom increases drastically if you use that glyph. Like, the hot just heals so much. But the fact that you need to reapply it so often, like having 2 10-second hots that you need to apply all the time, keep 100% uptime on both, it's so time consuming that I'm kind of unconvinced by it. But I guess it could see some use at some points. I personally don't need it at anywhere, but like if someone wants to feel adventurous and try it out, like it's not a bad choice really.
Alrighty, that sounds good. Thank you for all of that. I think we're gonna bounce over to the monk. Zuggie, you want to walk me through talent choices and things that have maybe changed with monk, and kind of give me a back and forth? What works here, sir?
Well, for the first mobility talent, I'm always using Tiger's Lust. All but one fight. Because if I want to use just jumping down to Cheetah Pedo, if I want to use that, I obviously want to be able to do as many cheetah torpedoes as possible because of more damage.
Sure.
So then I'm using the first one, Celerity.
Celerity. Yeah.
Yeah, I can pronounce that.
Yeah.
But yeah, then I'm using that. Other than that, Tiger's Lust is brilliant because you can also cast it on others and it removes roots. I mean, it's just so. I can't play without it. I feel so handicapped when I don't have that talent. But obviously, like our main tank, he's always playing with 3 roles. He prefers that, so I mean it's probably a bit of preference as well. For the next one, Chi Burst, most damage when there's more than 1 target. Best healing as well. You can play with Sense Sphere if you wanna DPS single target stuff like Gorfind is a good example. It does a lot of damage, and it does a lot of damage on what's the Valithri as well.
It just requires like 2 different macros because you can have 2 spheres up at one time.
Yes,
so it's just
exactly.
micromanagement. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit more convenient to play with if it's single target Chi Wave instead. If you don't want to manage that, but I'm usually playing with 2 macros and then I target myself and then one of the rogues because I know they're always in range. Because if you are playing with it for pure damage reasons, you don't want it to explode. So putting it on the tank might not be such a good idea, because you want all of the uptime on it.
Right. Okay.
As possible. For the next one, Power Strikes is by far the best talent. Chi Brew was nerfed, so it generates a bit less stacks of manatee, but that's a while back. You can argue that it's better on if you need burst on demand, especially when you have T18 bonus.
Right. Okay.
Because then you can actually do some pretty strong on demand burst as well. By pulling 4 cheese and then popping 2 times chi brew and then you have 2 additional uplifts. So, but generally, Power Strikes is better because it has more chi generation per minute as well, compared to chi brew.
Okay.
CC talent, leg sweep. I usually go with that. Sulharak I use it, and I use it on imps on. I did use it on imps on Manowars as well, but there I actually used charging Oxwave because of the 30-second cooldown instead of the 45-second.
Oh, yeah, that's right. 45 lines up almost perfectly, but if you miss it by a couple seconds, then it's not up for the next wave. I get it. Okay, cool. Yeah.
So charging Oxwave there at least. Our tank is handling it now, so I don't really. I'm still keeping leg sweep on that fight now. Next talent, diffuse magic is good on everything that has to do with magic. Archimon, for instance, last phase, if you mess up the dance, you can pop it, survive that. You can pop it during, I don't know, whatever. Basically, it's a really, really nice talent. Dampen Harm is really strong as well, and I tend to use that on some fights. For instance, on everything that's physical, basically, you obviously want to use Dampen Harm. It could be used as well on if you do heroic Archimon, you could use it on the Infernos. Then you have the three charges. It's a really good spell as well. Really a nice talent. It kind of depends, like when I use it. If I know that, even if it's magic, if I know that something's gonna hit me within 1.5 minutes twice, I use Dampen Harm. If it's obviously absorbs enough to make me able to survive it. It's kind of, you have to consider that a bit when you use it. Diffuse magic is just a really good whoops I messed up button on a lot of fights. Diffuse magic is also good on Comrock for the hands, particularly if you stack up too much, you can save yourself by using that. I always use diffuse on that fight at least.
Alright.
the next one is the more interesting one. Talent row, in my opinion, is probably the most interesting talent row. Everything that has to do with pure damage, you pick Suen. And I play with Suen on 12 out of 13 fights.
Wow.
Chi Torpedo is really nice if you don't have very good gear and can't spam Rushing Jadewind if you're going to heal. Chi Torpedo is brilliant. But it's way better for the damage component. On stuff like Iskar, for instance, it's insane how much damage it does. And Rushing Jadewind is purely for AoE stack healing. You shouldn't really go with that if you want a DPS, because it just doesn't do enough damage, even on AoE. Chi Torpedo is way better there. For the last row, Pool of Mists, too powerful to not use. Breath of the Serpent was usable on what was the name? Flamebender, I believe.
Yep. That can be RF.
Yeah, it aligned pretty well with her cooldown and her cooldown on what was that ability called? I don't even remember.
The flaming vortex thing. I have no idea. It's been too long. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been too long, and I'm trying to forget that place. But yeah, no, on that one it aligned brilliantly. The damage pattern, because of the duration of that phase and then the time between it was just that spell was really good on that fight because she was stacked completely.
So Pool of Mists, though, the damage component for both Red Crane and the healing component for Serpent Stance is still too good. Chi Explosion just kind of fell away, it seems, yeah?
Yeah, it had its moments, but it kind of disappeared.
Okay.
I mean, it's just, the thing is just Pool of Mist is just too strong. And the way our tier 18 bonus works doesn't really support Chi Explosion at all. Because it doesn't contribute anything to Chi Explosion. It contributes to Uplift. So you want obviously as many Renewing Mist out as possible and as many Extend Life. It's just, even without the set bonus, Pool of Mist is just too good.
Alrighty. Any major glyphs you want to bring up that are of note that are people should be aware of?
Renewing Mist, Glyph of Renewing Mist is always something that I roll with. Because I DPS all the time, on a lot of encounters at least, Surging Mist, so you don't really have to target anyone. You can just press the button.
Yeah.
You would have a bit more control, obviously, by not using it, and control over where the heal went, and it is something that could be taken into consideration. If you want to have more control of your healing, well, then you probably wouldn't want to run with that glyph. Other than that, Fortifying Brew is kind of nice. On some fights, I don't really use it because that means less damage on Touch of Death. Because you have less health with it. Transcendence is something I'm running with a lot as well. Reduce the cooldown.
Yeah.
That's really beneficial for Sul'Karak, the reduced cooldown, because then you can actually Transcendence if you get targeted by search green stuff 2 times in a row. So yeah, that's the only glyphs I'm kind of running with. Soothing Mist you could do for the movement component, but you don't really use Soothing Mist that much,
right?
With good gear, because you can spam so much Renewing Mist.
Sounds fair to me. All right, it's time to dampen the socks now. Dunderz,
yay!
You want to walk me through Shaman talent changes, and then we'll wrap with glyphs before we do the Q&A part of the show?
Great. So let's start from the top. So the level 15 talent row, which is like sort of the survivability talent row, where you have Nature's Guardian, Stone Bulwark Totem, and Astral Shift. And generally, for almost every boss, you're gonna go Astral Shift for this because it's just like it's a pretty significant personal cooldown, and it's gonna be your only personal cooldown if you choose to spec into it. If you don't, then you have you have Onk. If you die, you can rest yourself, I guess. But it's
Right.
like yeah. So Astral Shift because it brings you a lot of control. Stone Bulwark Totem, like you still have control over that. But the amount of absorption it gives you, even at extremely high item levels, is like so tiny that it's just not good at all. If you want to pad numbers and if you want to be a scumbag, you can go Stone Bulwark because the absorption it gives you counts into your healing. But if you want to kill bosses, then you should go Astral Shift.
Yep, gotcha on that one.
Right.
Yeah.
You can actually go. I thought about this, and I haven't confirmed it myself, but I thought that you could go Nature's. It would make sense to go Nature's Guardian on Gore Fiend specifically, because unless something goes horribly wrong, in which case Astral Shift isn't going to save you, nothing on Gore Fiend Mythic even should deal a significant amount of damage onto you in a single hit. So Nature's Guardian is just going to give you a higher uptime of basically survivability. Like it'll be able to proc several times during the stack up. So you could go Nature's Guardian on Gorefiend.
I've used Nature's Guardian a lot myself from a melee standpoint. I used it exclusively on Blackhand because it would save you from the collapsing ceiling stuff. But
right, yeah.
Most of the time, it's been Astral Shift for me as well too. Yeah.
But you have Shamanistic Rage, right?
Correct,
So
of course. Yep.
That's cheating.
It's cheating.
I don't understand why the rest of Shamans don't have that, but it's
not enough rage.
Yeah, probably.
So what's up next?
So next is sort of, I don't know what to call this, like utility talent row.
Yeah.
So Frozen Power, Earthgrab Totem, and Windwalk Totem. And I mean, you can go I go Windwalk Totem for every single boss in this tier. And Windwalk Totem has its use on some bosses like Gorefiend, Sarkarthar, maybe Manaroth last phase, depending on how you do it. The other ones, you won't really see any use for it whatsoever. I mean, Frozen Power would require you to actually bind Frost Chalk. It's like, I don't bind that, so. Next up is, so this is like totem weaving kind of thing. Call of the Elements, Totemic Persistence, and Totemic Projection. And I went Totemic Projection on every boss except for Solarak, because I'm pretty sure you're aware of this since you're a shaman too, but there is you can ground pretty much anything on Solarak, right? So, and there is a certain ability there called Void Surge that it's very beneficial to your group if you manage to ground that every single time. It basically just like negates a hard part of the fight. And to be able to do that consistently, because there is a point on that fight where the boss absorbs Ominous, which is the ad that casts it. And when he takes over that ability, the cooldown timer of that spell gets reset. So at some points, it's gonna be like he casts them back to back. So I just go Call of the Elements there to be able to always cover it.
Yep.
But apart from that, I go Totemic Projection to be able to just like reposition Healing Streams, Healing Tide, and probably the strongest thing is just like being able to play around with Spirit Link, like launch it into a melee camp or something if you're not there.
Indeed.
So that adds a lot of convenience. I mean, Totemic Persistence and Call of the Elements like arguably gives you a bit of throughput, assuming you don't actually benefit, like you get any benefit out of Totemic Projection, but the gains are so minimal that it's just like, it's just not worth it, really.
It's a PvP talent.
Yeah.
60?
So, yeah, level 60. So this one's a bit interesting. In that you tend to swap between, and most shamans, I believe, might just stick with Echo of the Elements for every boss. Like I understand that the hype of double Spirit Link is pretty high, but it's on most, like on every boss fight where sort of we didn't deem it necessary to have an additional Spirit Link at some point, I went with Ancestral Swiftness for the added haste and the convenience of an instant cast spell. It just increases your throughput. There used to be another good reason to go with Echo on all bosses, and it was back in Blackrock Foundry, before we had our current 4-piece, and our current 4-piece basically gives us a chance to get a free Riptide when we chain heal someone. So back in Blackrock Foundry, it used to be like a big deal with your Riptide uptime. Like it was very important to always make sure that you had Riptide on cooldown to maximize the amount of Riptides you had out on the raid, to maximize High Tide, right? Because you need a lot of Riptides to get any benefit from High Tide. So what this did was that if you went Echo back then, instead of having to worry about recasting it every 5 seconds, you could pretty much at the start of the fight with Echo, you could just throw out 2 Riptides back to back and not have to worry about, you know, looking at Riptide for another 10 seconds. So it would allow for sort of a smoother playing style. And it was a bit more forgiving in terms of maximizing Riptide. I don't feel that's too relevant anymore with our current 4-piece. Like, that doesn't really make any sense, like, for a reason to stay Echo. I just prefer Ancestral Swiftness for the haste. But Echo definitely has its use on some fights. So
Right.
you're basically going to be swapping there depending on the fight.
So 75, did rushing streams just become baseline, almost? Or...
Yes, pretty much. There are some fights like Council, like Tyrant, where you can get away with running conductivity. But the thing is, healing ray in this expansion doesn't really account for a lot of throughput compared to what it did earlier expansions, especially like Mist of Pandaria, where it was massive. So playing conductivity on fights where it's like where it looks like it's going to be a good thing won't really end up giving you more throughput than going with rushing streams anyways, because it's just going to be more of a significant boost running rushing streams. So, I mean, the level 75 one is pretty much just like rushing streams all day, every day.
Okay.
Yeah. And the last 2 ones are super interesting, actually. Lots of diversity. So, Elemental Blast and High Tide. Cool. All right, on to glyphs. No, but it's right. It's weird because I admire what Blizzard did with an Elemental Blast, because it used to be, I don't know which one was worse, like making Elemental Blast mandatory or just making having Elemental Blast being absolutely worthless like it was in earlier expansions. Because what they did was, like, the weird thing with this talent row, the level 91, is that there is only one talent that gives you any form of regen. So obviously you're going to pick that one.
Yep.
So Elemental Blast is just like, it's just, you just go Elemental Blast because it gives you regen. I still like Primal Elementalist. Like, it used to be the thing everyone went for back in Mist of Pandaria. But it's just, and it still does the same thing. It is a super interesting talent in my opinion, but it just doesn't, it isn't as strong as Elemental Blast right now because of the region. So
Primal Elementals from Resto's standpoint always, to me, was you always used the channel ability from both elementals to basically give you 2 minutes of increased healing.
Yeah, and also the Earth Elemental gave you, like, it was basically like a personal cooldown.
Small shield wall plus healing. Yeah, exactly. They both did that. Yep.
Yeah. So that was super interesting. But unfortunately, you just can't afford doing that anymore. So you just go Elemental Blast.
Yep. And then anything else on High Tide? I mean, Cloudburst was cool, but it didn't do any.
Yeah, it's I mean, we can get into it a bit if you want. I mean, I think everyone that plays Resto Shaman knows that it doesn't matter if you have your 4-piece or the old 4-piece, or if you don't have anything. You just go High Tide for every single scenario. It's just a superior thing in terms of throughput and convenience. Cloudburst Totem, like, it looked super interesting when they introduced it, and I saw it, and it was like, wow, this is gonna sort of promote really smart gameplay. But what it turns out to be is just like an even more terrible version of Ancestral Guidance, in the way that it doesn't give you any instant feedback, right? You have to wait for the healing to be put out. So, and you're also like, if you for whatever reason try to play Cloudburst, it just doesn't, like, you just don't know where to utilize it, because the healing that Cloudburst does is based on the healing that you put into it, and it doesn't take into account any overhealing. So if you pop it sort of before there is a high damage spike, then it won't do any healing by the time it explodes. And if you pop it, like, start using it or put it down by the time there is a lot of damage, then it's going to explode by the time there is no more damage and everything's been healed. So I just find it impossible to work with.
Yeah. And Storm Elemental for Resto is almost a joke. It literally is only a DPS cooldown, and the heal it does is not good, because your Storm Elemental does less damage as Resto.
Exactly. Like, it doesn't do a lot of damage, which means that it doesn't do any healing, and it's really clunky. Like, you place it and it stands still, and it's like you have to stand close to it to get any healing from it. Yep. So it's just not very good.
Any major glyphs of note, sir?
Let's see. So one that I would consider pretty much mandatory in terms of major glyphs for this tier would be Spearwalker's Focus.
Yep.
And what it does is that it reduces the cooldown and duration of Spearwalker's Grace. And I can't think of any ability or like any boss right now that requires you to run for more than 8 seconds straight. So what this glyph does for you is that it just allows you to use it more frequently throughout a fight, really. So it just gives you more usage of Spearwalker's Grace. So that's a really handy glyph. After that, you can go like Glyph of Healing Stream. Adds a bit of damage reduction to magic spells.
Now here's my question for you. You should know this. Does the additional proc from rushing streams also give the healing stream glyph component, or no?
Ooh. I'm pretty sure, someone in the chat can probably correct me on this, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't. It used to.
I've heard
at
it does
some
not.
point. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it used to at some point at the beginning when they introduced rushing streams in Mist of Pandaria. But it doesn't anymore, as far as I'm aware. It's only the sort of original tick if you have healing stream. So
right.
No, it doesn't get duplicated, unfortunately. But it's still like a decent glyph. It's better than anything else.
And this is the response I'm wanting for in chat. It does, it does, it doesn't, it doesn't. It did in Mob, it no longer does.
Excellent. Okay, I believe it's probably pretty easy to check out, but to my knowledge, it doesn't give you an additional buff of that. So.
Yeah.
After that, you can go like for your last slot. You could go like it doesn't really matter at that point. Like Glyph of Healing Wave, Cleansing Waters, Flame Shock, Chaining. No.
I've heard chaining is a no-no, right?
No.
Is it no-no?
No.
It's a no-no.
It's a no-no.
Okay. Because they buffed the base jump of Chain Heal. So now it's
they did buff that.
Good.
That was a while back, I think. But it's the base jump is still like pretty. It doesn't jump very far. But the thing is that High Tide sort of works as it gives you pretty much the same thing as Glyph of Chaining does.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't account for all of the bounces, but it alleviates a bit. So on most fights, like you won't suffer anyways. So
it does. Well, that was a whole information to soak in. Why we do talents last is because it all sort of funnels into that, all the information we do beforehand. So I'm going to take a quick moment here to tell you guys about some other websites and some things you might need to know about or bookmark for the future, and then we'll get into some viewer questions. So, first one up, of course, we're talking a lot about Resto Shamans today, and everyone's always asked me, like, is there a place for Resto Shamans in the internet? Now there is! I plugged this a little while ago, but chainheal.com is where you want to go. They have mythic guides for every single boss. They'll have PTR/beta stuff when it comes up. They've got different Resto Shaman builds. They've got a pair of forums right here. There's also a ask button where you can send in your own questions. There's also different articles, new optimization, different rankings, stuff like that. What kind of healer are you? You can go check out chainheal.com. All about Resto Shamanism. Additionally, we try to find a place for Resto Druids. I'm going to assume it is on the MMO Champion forums because I'm not sure there's a place for them specifically, but there is also for the Funky Monks. There's chiburst.com, which I think their stuff is a little bit outdated currently. I haven't actually checked throughout all the guides, but the streams, the 2 different podcasts that are about monk stuff only, as well as the forums. And then I will confirm here real quick. Zuggie, what is the IRC for monk stuff? Is it still Peak of Serenity?
I actually have no clue. I haven't used the IRC for a long time.
Fair enough. I know there is one. I'm just not sure if that's just rolled into the Acarus IRC now as well, or yeah. I'm not sure. But it definitely is there. You can go check out Chiburst if you want some more Funky Monk stuff. And again, of course, if you've missed any past episodes of FinalBossTV, they are all found on our website or our YouTube page through the episode selection. We're also in podcast form if you want to do the audio-only version. You can send in questions or submit applications to be a guest on future shows through this one. And the favored page is currently in its beta state. I'm coding a whole bunch of stuff in the background there. It is going to eventually be a gigantic page. It'll just scroll down through that's going to be plugging and listing a whole bunch of great websites, from theory crafting websites to community pages to YouTubers to graphic artists. It's all going to be here. We've got about 70 graphics in total to get through, so that'll be in the works soon enough. And of course, if you want to help support Final Boss TV and what we do here and keep us rolling, I like to have a you get something back for your time. And the biggest thing to do that with helping us out and getting something to wear is through our apparel shop designed by humans. Right now, there is a $75 or more free shipping. So you want to buy like a hoodie. It's getting kind of cold right now. We have the Little Final Bosses by Fabelina up here. The 4 different designs. We have the Method World First shirts. You can blame this little Celestial Dragonling if you like to. But different types of shirts, tank tops, baseball tees, hoodies, sweatshirts, phone cases, art prints. Both for male and female cuts of shirts. And we appreciate everyone that has supported us doing so. There's a lot of good stuff on there. And Fabelina may have one more shirt coming before BlizzCon, but then more after. We'll be making a couple more. So thank you all for that, and thank you all for the continued support. And we've got about, I'm going to say 15 minutes. My timer on Twitch is not working because the commercial stuff at the beginning bugged out. But I think we got about 12 to 15 minutes for viewer questions. If you have questions, you can send them in on Twitter at FinalBossTV, or you can send it to us right here in chat. So throw up some questions if you got some time. And I got to make sure we got it here on time so the VOD isn't 2 hours long. That's a little bit much. So 12 to 15 minutes or so, chat room. Do you have any questions for our guests? Please feel free to ask away. Oh, boy. Oh, Leadfoot's asking a total ball of wax question there. Would you like to see spirit removed from the game and mana regeneration normalized?
Oh, that's a good one.
That is actually a good one.
They kind of tried to do that with this expansion, though. They made less spirit drop as you gained more gear, but it didn't really work out that way, did it?
There was, like, they did go on about this sort of triage healing kind of thing. And it did, like, work out to a certain extent. It felt all right, like it was kind of working at the beginning of Primal, but then it just got out of hand, like the other expansions, where it's like mana's irrelevant now.
Yeah, it totally is. You just spam all day. I don't...
Yeah, but I feel like they have succeeded in their goals, though. From in Primal, spirit was highly relevant, and mana was essential part of every fight. Really well, like you honestly had to think so far ahead with your casts and all what you wanted to do. So while I personally like the spirit system, but this kinda always leads to that the final tier has infinite mana for the healers. So maybe if they could find some kind of solution for that, it would be even better.
Yeah, I don't know. Because they wanted to try the active mana regen system. That didn't work out. Really, only Monk has that with going back and forth in their 2 stances, right? Like, doesn't Lightning Bolt still give back mana? But, like, you know, it's kind of... I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know what they're going to do. So Light Sentinel wants to recap on this. I don't know if you actually ever really put this in. Dunderz, do you ever use the Resto Shaman R1 Trinket?
No, never.
There it is. I mean, there were some things about people talking about challenge mode stuff earlier, but
Oh, sorry for challenge modes.
Well, I don't know if it because the Leech Trinket won't be very good in challenge modes because you don't do damage. I think that was the thing that people were saying. Because then you can't really get a much benefit out of that. And obviously, because the stits are squished, reduplicating your own heal might be good, but I don't know.
Aren't usually the trinkets with like percentage procs and whether it scales with item level, they are terrible in challenge modes when they scale to like 1% or something.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why the Archimon Trinket for Resto Shaman just gives you more Riptides, up to 1 extra. So like.
Yeah, I mean, in addition to that, for challenge mode specifically, like the proc chance would probably go down to something like -5%.
Oh, maybe.
So.
You might be right.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not that good. Who knows? Opens up some more engaging gameplay when you have the option of dropping Spirit. I just don't know what Blizzard wants to do with healing in that regard, because they want to make you either care about it, not care about it, have to DPS to get mana back. I don't know. Oh, 2 questions back to back. Honey Bear brings up question, absorb effects, go. And right after that, Pal asks, do you think the Disc Priest is a bit too strong?
Age-old topic. I personally feel like absorbs they are a great way to add some depth in the healing, because otherwise everyone will be just, hey, your HP dropped here, let's get it back up.
Right.
But I personally like the idea, and I feel like discipline priests are not too strong right now. They are right, maybe ever so slightly, because absorbs are inherently better than healing, because well, preventing the damage is just so good.
Of course.
But I personally like how they are right now, and maybe even introduce some small absorbs to the classes that don't have them right now even.
I mean, monks had with a set piece, so that the orbs we dropped from mastery actually gave a tiny bit of absorb. That was decent, I guess, but nowhere near discipline priest, of course.
Right.
I must say I like the absorb mechanic a lot from discipline priest, and as Alzu said, they are ever so slightly overpowered, but it kind of depends on the damage as well. There has to be enough damage to support the other healers in the raid.
Right.
I mean, if the damage is too low, then of course the absorbs are gonna shine and look really strong compared to regular heals. But on fights where there is actually a lot of damage going on and throughput healers still have something to heal, they are quite equal with discipline priest in my opinion.
Yeah, the topic we always brought up about absorb. Should the discipline priest shield take like 3 hits to fully absorb? Should it like have like this diminishing return on it where it like absorbs a lot at first, then it just kind of teeters off? Like, I wonder what they'll do, because right now just giving someone like 200,000 extra HP is just like, that's pretty good on a GCD.
That's amazing, actually.
On a GCD,
I mean,
yeah.
it's I personally don't think the discipline priests are overpowered in terms of numbers. Maybe for farm for certain bosses, but like during progression, you're using so few healers that regardless of if you have a discipline priest or not, there should be a lot of healing to be covered for other or damage intake that needs to be healed by other healers anyways. And also I think that, just like Alzu said, like it adds depth to the gameplay and to the game. Like if Blizzard were to just like remove the concept of discipline priest or absorbs as a whole, they would have to massively simplify a lot of fights and just make them straight out easier, to account for no absorbs, like basically no extensions of health bars. So I don't know.
Yeah. So here's a little fun question. BC Walker wants to know: is there a class that currently lacks a healing spec that you'd want to give one? If so, which class, what spec, and why? I think of Mage or Warlock off the bat. But
I feel like Warlocks don't deserve to heal because they are, well, it's just the lore reasons. Like, they are demonic and all that bad stuff, and healing is like the all the good in the world. And I don't know, I just don't feel mages thematically. I don't feel like any classes deserve a healing spec right now.
you didn't think Demon Hunter should have had a healing spec?
No, definitely not.
No,
I'll heal you by hitting with my blades in the back of your head. Yeah. Yeah. No, I always thought. I mean, there's only 4 spots for healers in the game right now. Even 3 most of the time in Mythic. So like, you can't even add more healers. There's 6 in the game right now, and only 3 to 4 even get used. So.
Yeah, to be fair, like, there's 2 tank spots and there is 4 tank classes, so it is still okay if there are multiple unused tank classes.
Wait, 4? Who isn't a tank in your opinion?
Wait, is there more?
There's 5. There's about to be 6. Yeah.
Oh, really?
I always thought you were doing like a sly, like, so-and-so classes in a tank, like prop power didn't exist.
No, I honestly thought that there was only 4, but
nope.
I must have forgotten someone.
Paladin, Tank, Druid, Death Knight, and Monk. Soon to be another one with the Demon Hunter.
Yeah.
Trying to find questions here before we get out of here. Yeah, the active regen thing is an interesting topic that people are pretty polarized about.
Here's a good one from Mr. BC Walker. Like, what's the best raid in Warlords for engaging healer gameplay? I personally am I'm hugely. I feel like this is the most important thing about healer gameplay. Like the raids make it fun, not the class itself, really. And I would probably have to go with Blackrock Foundry myself. I like the fights there. The mechanics to heal were really interesting in the end.
Yeah, I probably prefer Blackrock Foundry as well overall.
I always ask this question: Do healers like just lots of sporadic damage? Do they like fights that are gained at them, like a Sulong fight or a Valithia Dreamwalker fight, where like you're effectively part of the encounter as well, not just like holding health bars? Like, because every healer has a different opinion of what they like, so I guess it's probably why it's hard to quote unquote design fights for healing.
I personally like those fights where I get to be the center of attention, so to say. Like Valithria, Zulong, all those fights where like healing is the new DPS. It makes me
Right.
feel just good doing it, as opposed to currently where I feel like I'm just the pillar that holds the DPS up while they do the work.
I like the fights where I actually get to use all my utilities. One obviously being the fact that you can DPS. And Blackrock Foundry on, for instance, Blast Furnace, I had the, kind of as Alzu says, like center of attention. I had to like use paralysis to CC one guard, for instance. Just using all your utility, everything your class can do. That's fun in my opinion. And having to use those spells that you rarely use, such as paralysis, for instance, that's fun for me.
Well, that brings me into two different questions that I can bring up then. Is there any spells or spell that you would like pruned from your class that you don't feel like is ever really used as your healing spec? I'll go right back to you, of course, first, Zuggie, because you were just talking about that. Is there anything you want pruned out of the monk?
Not really. I mean, I think most of our spells are actually useful. There is one though that they completely failed with. That's Detonate Chi. It's a horrible spell and it should be gone. It's just bad. Don't put it on your bar.
Alzu, what do you think?
Not necessarily removed. I was honestly really sad when I saw some of my crazy utility spells go in Warlords of Draenor, I think. Or was it in Mists of Pandaria? I can't even remember anymore. But I would like to see Swiftman redesigned, because in its current form, I don't want to see it in my bars. But then without it, it would feel a bit too empty. So I would just like to see something else replace it.
You don't want Symbiosis back?
Oh, I definitely want Symbiosis back.
Okay, there it is.
It was the best
There it
spell in
is.
the game.
It was
so
pretty
much
cool.
fun.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Anything from you, Dunderz?
I'd like to see some more use out of Chain Heal, honestly. Like, I don't feel that we're using that ability enough.
That's the part of the show we're at now, aren't we?
Yeah. No, but it's I think there are several abilities that just feels extremely situational and kind of like not necessarily situational, but not fun, and it doesn't feel like you actually have to use them. It's like two of them would be Unleash Life right now, where it's like, you're hurting yourself if you're using that ability while you're standing still. It's like the only point where you'd actually use it is if you're on the move and you have to run for less than 3 seconds, so you don't have to use Ghost Wolf. And another one would be Earth Shield, where I feel like right now it just feels like it's like an awkward ability where it's like you want to keep it up, but you don't really know why you're keeping it up. It's like, why am I stressing over this ability? It's like, why do I actually try and keep it up? Because it does barely anything. So I'd like to see maybe Earth Shield being reworked into like an external cooldown, like a 3 or 2 minute cooldown.
More cooldowns for.
Exactly. I mean,
more
that must be one
cooldowns for
problem.
Shaman.
Exactly.
Oh,
I mean,
no.
I obviously realize that it's like that at that point we'll have every single thing at our arsenal, so it's like it might be a bit broken, but
yeah. Well, I think that's gonna have to do it for us today. If you have questions, of course, we did plug some places where you can go find these people, and of course, I have some more to do right now. But I'm gonna hit the button, gentlemen. It's button time. So thank you all for tuning in to episode number 100 of Final Boss TV, your WoW endgame rating show. Of course, if you've listened to our past episodes or want to catch up on more stuff on the things, you can do the website down below. It's right there. There's where everything gets put up online. Around the table again, real quick for all of our guests. It was Alzu for Resto Druids. You can catch him in raids in Paragon when he wants to do it. You can ask him questions over on his Twitch stream at Alzu with an underscore. Thank you, sir. Good to see you back on the show again. It was fun.
Thank you.
Can they ask you how often do you stream? You gotta be doing stuff so they can bug you with Resto Druid things?
No. Oh no, I don't want to give a definitive answer because I stream mostly when I feel like it.
It's fair.
And it's not every week. Like, if you're expecting me to stream tomorrow, I'm not actually raiding tomorrow at all.
Well, Alzu streams or riots are gonna happen now, so okay.
Yeah, probably. But
that's fair enough.
It's occasional when I do.
Awesome. Well, they can check you out there. Of course, then there is Zuggie. You can go follow him on his Twitter at ZuggieTM, and he'll post when he is doing the things, and you can probably ask him questions there as well. You take questions on Twitter and stuff like that, Zuggie. Is that good?
Yeah. It's fine with me. I also stream from time to time, but that's also when I feel like it. So.
Yep, that's how it happens. But thank you for being on the show for the first time, sir. You did a great job. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And of course, there's Dunderz. You can go follow him and all the things he writes up on the guides on chainheal.com. Thank you for being on the show again, sir. Thank you guys for putting together this awesome website as well. I really appreciate that. It was always a question that was asked to me, like, there's no place for Resto Shamans. Well, now there is. So,
Thank you.
You can go check out all the guides that the team over there is putting together. Thank you for your time today, sir. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
And then, of course, next week, as I went over a little earlier, next week for 101, I'm sitting down with 3 members of Limit, the new top NA US rating guild. We'll see if they can keep that spot in Legion and what their plans are and who these guys are and where the guild came from next week's show. And the week after that will be our BlizzCon pre-2015 special. Those were all the wrong words, but in a different order. I'm sitting down with Bellular and Asmongold to talk about our thoughts and predictions for BlizzCon, and we're going to put some money on the line, maybe, some tinfoil hat, a little bit, and see what's going to happen at the BlizzCon show. But thank you all so much for tuning in. If you have questions for Limit or questions for Bell or Asmon, you can send them over to the Ask a Boss button on the website. But until then, trust in your seal of inevitable gold. That's all you get, really, right? That's why Zuggie doesn't have a soul cap. And until next week, everybody, behind the scenes, everyone, thanks so much for watching. YouTube comments on Twitter or wherever we do find you. Bye! Bye! Wave bye at the nice people. Wave bye! Wave! Alzu, give him a wave or a flap. Okay. That works.
Oh my god.
That works.